Georgia Tech fires Geoff Collins, and now Deion Sanders is going to take over the Yellow Jackets. I will have to see that to believe it. If you're new here, I'm Brian Knight. Thank you for joining me on Not Bobby Durkins. This is my brand new channel. Subscribe if you would like. Pass along if you'd like. I'd really appreciate it. Let's dive right into football. So Georgia Tech parts ways with Geoff Collins, parts ways with the AD. And now what? So here's some history to kind of set this up. Paul Johnson was at Georgia Tech running the 1940s version of option football. I think he got them an ACC championship in 2014, and then a little team from right down the road named Clemson really came on the scene, aside from Florida State. Things became more difficult, and then Georgia Tech just really wasn't recruiting at the level or developing the players. I don't know what happened. All I know is they parted ways with Paul Johnson, but one of the hesitations is he was running an offense that only 4 major schools, including themselves, was running, and that was the traditional option style, triple option offense. That would include Army, Navy, Air Force. I had to think about that for a second. And then, of course, Georgia Tech at the time. Probably some small school. Then they brought in Geoff Collins. We're going to revamp the thing. And now they're firing him. And I just want to go over the Georgia Tech situation. And I'm just going to tell you this. I'm not going for shock value here, but I'm going to tell the truth. And the truth is not good for Georgia Tech. It's actually quite terrible. And it would be quite terrible for anyone who would take over this role. So let's start off with this. Georgia Tech is a very difficult school to get into. Unless you want to become an engineer, you really don't have options. And here's a little homework for you. This coming Saturday, when teams are introducing themselves on the pregame, if it shows their major, I want you to notice how many sociologists we have on a football team. I also want you to notice how many parks and recreation leaders of tomorrow we have on the team. My point is, yeah, you'll see some guy who they tout that he has a 4.0 and he's studying to be a surgeon as well as a football player. That's great. That's that's not a dime a dozen. That's like 1 in a million, probably more than that. My point is that a lot of football players, they're playing in the college ranks just trying to get to the NFL. And I'm a businessman. I get it. I applaud you. But that hinders people from going to certain schools. I know that one of the great rebuttals to the whole Georgia Tech's a tough school is Calvin Johnson. There was one Calvin Johnson. Y'all remember him? One Calvin Johnson. There wasn't a bunch of them. There was one of them. And whether it's him as an athlete or whether it's him as an academic, the guy was, he was something special. But the rest of your talent is going to go to schools that they can get into, and not only get into, they can get into a degree that is just plainly simple, okay? And I don't blame them for that because they just want to focus on playing football, especially if they have the talent to make it to the pros. So that is one of the big problems with going to Georgia Tech to coach or play there, okay? Next, there's a little team in Athens, Georgia called the Georgia Bulldogs. Love them or hate them, they are the defending national champions. They've always recruited very well. They've owned Georgia Tech for a very long time, and it doesn't look like anything's going to change. So not only do you have to recruit against them, you have to play them. And Georgia actually offers you the chance, even though it's a really good school, to be more than an engineer. So yet again, we go back to the first con. The next con in it is you're in Atlanta, Georgia, and I grew up on the South Carolina Georgia line, and I would go to Atlanta all the time. I go to Atlanta. I have some really good memories of Atlanta, and that's what they are. They're memories. It's history. It's over. It is done. If you live on the outskirts in what's considered Metro Atlanta, but you're not downtown, this is no offense towards you, but how many times do you like to go downtown? Yeah, that's what I thought. I was there just a few days ago with my son. He's a big Coastal Carolina fan, and we went down there to see them play Georgia State at the Old Ted, and I felt like I was this close to being mugged pretty much the entire night. It's not fun. I dare you to Google Atlanta and their crime rate. It's one of the worst in the country. It's terrible. And I don't know why anybody would want to go down there and coach, because imagine this, you have to recruit against people who has fantastic atmospheres. Take, for instance, Clemson. Clemson is in a small town in South Carolina. It has a lake right outside the stadium. You have the Blue Ridge Mountains in the distance. The crime is nothing like it is in Atlanta or any other big city. And then, of course, you're going up against a guy who's had 10 or 11 consecutive 10-win seasons, 2 national championships, 6 consecutive playoff appearances, and has a really good culture. So either send your kid to Atlanta to be mugged, pillaged, carjacked, beat up, shot, or killed, or you can go to Clemson. Or you can go to Tuscaloosa, or you can go to Knoxville. Another kind. Also, there's pressure. Also, the pressure to turn this thing around. Geoff Collins had to basically be the sacrificial lamb in kind of a sense. He goes in, he's taken over players who cannot run his system, and then he's working against the other things that I named. And look, here's the deal. I don't know Geoff Collins. Geoff Collins could be a great guy. He could be a terrible guy. I don't know. But just completely talking about football here, anybody who's using their thinking brain, as I like to say, realizes this guy was really up against it. And I really don't know why Georgia Tech is firing him unless they know exactly who they're going after, and pretty much that person will sign on. It does not make sense. Let's talk about the candidates. Deion Sanders being the first guy. If you grew up watching football like I did in the 90s, you saw Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is one of the great players from Florida State, the 80s. I mean, it was amazing. Then you see him playing for the Atlanta Falcons, played baseball for the Atlanta Braves, goes on and plays for San Francisco, Dallas, and I think he played for somebody else. I can't remember after that. I stopped keeping up with it, NFL football. I'm not a big NFL fan. But this guy is one of the greatest athletes to ever play sports, obviously football. He likes a challenge. He's always prime-timing it. He's always got something to say, extremely confident. I know he's at Jackson State. I know that he got some of these recruits that are top recruits. And I'm just going to say this, no offense to Jackson State. Jackson State did not lure these guys in. Deion Sanders did. And I know his mission behind trying to promote the HBCU. He could have done that at Grambling, and those players that you're seeing at Jackson State wouldn't be there. They'd be at Grambling, or they'd be at Southern, or they'd be somewhere else, because Deion Sanders has that pull. Now, could he have that pull at Georgia Tech if he wanted to go there? Absolutely. I just don't see why he would want to go there and then have to coach against Florida State, where he went to school. Yeah, I don't see that. Then again, I've seen crazier things happen. Next up, talked about Coastal Carolina. Jamey Chadwell is an offensive genius. The guy is one of the hottest names in college football right now. He's taken that small school right outside of Myrtle Beach in Conway, South Carolina, and he has them rocking. Their offense is fantastic. I believe that right now his quarterback is the top RPO quarterback in the country. And I mean that. I've seen him play live. I've seen a lot of guys play live. He is ridiculous. He's a true competitor, but he can thank Jamey Chadwell for that too, because Jamey's given him the opportunity in his system. I don't know why Jamey would want to leave a place that basically worships him to go take over at Georgia Tech for all the other reasons I named out. Next up, kind of go through these a little quicker. Monken up at Army. I know the reason you want to do this, because he runs the option. Georgia Tech, if you're smart and with your academic standards you're supposed to be, you would not bring back someone or bring someone that would be bringing back that old style of offense. It doesn't make sense. It's not logical. But if you're not smart when it comes to making hires in football, go hire him, and you'll be facing this problem in probably about 10 years, maybe less. But anyway, he's a fantastic coach. I'm just saying, I don't see him being the right fit for you moving forward if you're wanting to be competitive. Bill O'Brien has been named. Bill O'Brien doesn't need this job. He took over for Joe Paterno after that entire scandal up at Penn State. He has been through a situation way worse than this. He did fantastic up there at Penn State, went on to coach the Texans, had some good years there. Now he's running OC for Nick Saban. He doesn't need this job. I don't know what would be the appeal of this job, even if he has ties to the school that I don't know about. And if he does, great, fantastic. It's just all the organizations I named up to this point is much greater than Georgia Tech. It doesn't make sense to me. The guy up at West Virginia, or not West Virginia, Marshall, which is in West Virginia. I think his name's Charles Huff. I wouldn't touch this job with a 10-foot pole if I were him. He's already had a banner win this year, a historic win. Even if Notre Dame is not that good, that will stick out in Marshall history. He'll have to really mess up for them to fire him. And so he has brighter pastures ahead of him. I know there's other names that's been brought up. Here's the deal. Georgia Tech, you fired a guy. And I know that everybody else is having success around you, and you want to have success too, and it's not happening as quickly as you would like. But as I said, and if I didn't say this, maybe I should, unless there's something bad that was going on behind the scenes that you had to act and get Geoff Collins out, I think you acted prematurely. I know that you want everybody to win, but you were the one who hired a coach about, I think 12 or 13, well, actually it's more than that now, about 15, 16 years ago, who ran a 1940s offense, and the next person in had to clean that up. That's on you. And you should have given this guy more time, at least a couple of more years, and then visited the drawing board if it didn't work out. At least you would be farther away from that last offensive style. Now you just look like someone who is wanting instant success, and you'll fire them to get to that place, even if it doesn't make sense. Nebraska just did that, and I don't think it's going to work out well for them either. So, anyway, thank you for joining me here. Who knows who will take this job? Whoever takes it is awfully confident or extremely conceited. But if I were the guys I named out, I would not touch this job. I would leave it alone. And, good luck to Georgia Tech. Well, I'm Brian Knight. Thank you for joining me on my new channel, Not Bobby Durkins. I hope that you'll subscribe. There'll also be a link below if you want to support the channel. Please go ahead. I'm glad you joined me, and I'll see you next time.